Here we go. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar today. Today, we'll be talking about grant writing and how it is a team activity. We are excited to have Diane Leonard with us today as our guest speaker. And if you haven't been on one of these before, my name is Tammy Tilsey, and I'm the nonprofit client marketing manager here at Foundant Technologies. And we love doing these educational webinars. The agenda is very simple. We briefly go over who is Foundant and then dive into grant writing and turn the time over to Diane. First, housekeeping items. We're using Zoom, probably all familiar with it. So I'll give you a couple of the key items you may want to tune. We have closed captions, so you can edit those settings. We will be using the Q&A. So please put your questions there so we can make sure that we don't lose them, because we will have chat going and you could chat with everyone. Hopefully everyone's doing that with where they're from as they're joining. And you can change it so that you can chat with everyone or just the host and panelists. But if you have a questions, please put it in the Q&A. We won't be using raise your hand because we have a large group with us today. So quickly, who is Foundant Technologies? Foundant's mission is to maximize the impact of the philanthropic community. And one of the ways that we do that is through these webinars. We want to make sure that everyone has the knowledge, tools, skills to do their job and can focus on their mission rather than spending a lot of time working on grant proposals. So Foundant has been providing software to the philanthropic community for several years. We started out with an online grant management application for funders. And that is our first product and still going strong. And you may apply to a lot of funders, family foundations, community foundations, utilizing our software. Shortly afterwards, we came up with a product called Grant Hub, and it's for grant seekers to manage all their proposal deadlines, their commonly used answers, their funders, excuse me, and keep track of history as well as what's coming up and searching for funders. Then we have a product for community foundations and also scholarship providers that really help with the back office and other systems and challenges that funders need. And our product Nonprofit Core that we had announced earlier this year is again targeted at nonprofits to help streamline their fundraising, CRM, and accounting systems, all in one platform. So it eliminates duplicate work and really streamlines your processes and minimizes how many systems you need to really manage your nonprofit. And that is something that we're very excited about. And if you're ever interested in any of these, please check with us later. That's not what today's topic is about. So, one more thing on Nonprofit Core, since that is new, I'm going to have Michaela chat out where you could learn more about that product, since some of our listeners are only familiar with Grant Hub. We also have a Compass community where we can continue the conversations afterwards, after our educational webinars. We get a lot of good information being traded in the chat, and we want to have that available via a community as well. So there is a link that Michaela will also share out if that is something you want to join. This session has been reviewed and approved by the GPCI, that's the Grant Professional Certifications Institute, their accepted education program. So you can get a point for this session towards your GPC credential, the professional development element. And this session is also approved for continuing education credits for your CFRE. And now, without any further delay, let me stop sharing my slides and turn the time over to Diane to jump in. I am so excited to have Diane on our webinar. met and fell into fast friends, a partnership way back in 2014. So I love having her on our webinars, and I'm going to turn the rest of the time over to her.
Thanks, Tammy. Oh my goodness, 2014? That was forever ago. But indeed, the team at Foundant and the team at DH Leonard Consulting love the opportunity to work together. And I'm thrilled to have everyone with us today for this particular topic. Grant writing is a team activity. And so I just want to say hello and make sure you know just a little bit about me and why Tammy's asked me to present a session for you. I certainly don't have all the answers for grants, would never even claim to have such a thing, but love talking about best practices in our work, different things that have worked for lots of high performing teams. I've been in the field my entire career. And so first I was a grant maker, then I was a grant seeker and founded DH Leonard Consulting and Grant Writing Services 17 years ago. And in that time, our team has secured more than $95 million for clients. That is a lot of different grant teams. It's not just, air quotes, the grant writer, the grant professional, the fundraising professional writing the grant and hitting submit. There is so much more behind it. And so that's really going to be the topic that we're going to focus on together today. And it's a huge passion area for me, talking about teams and how we can be as high performing and as sustainable as possible. Now, one little bullet point about me that I want to call out. It's the last one. Running and drinking coffee. In order to make it through the wacky days of being a parent in varsity swim season right before the school year starts, yeah, both of those things, key to my sustainable pace. And so I had a delightful 4-mile run this morning. And you see this coffee mug? Oh yeah, it was full. So the good news is I am fueled up and ready to go. But I'd love to hear from you in the chat box. What fuels your grant related work? No right or wrong answer, no judgment. Whatever it is, if you're willing to share, go ahead, let us know in the chat box. Let's see how diverse our different sources of fuel for our work can be. While you're doing that, I've got the agenda for our time together on the screen. 3 main points that I want to cover today. I want to think about how it is that we create a cross-functional grant team, what that can mean, what that can look like, talk about some different ways different organizations define a cross-functional grant team. We're going to talk about facilitating a grant team. How is it that we can help to do that in a successful, sustainable way? And also, we should start keeping track of how many times I say sustainable in today's webinar. And then lastly, what does it mean to operate at a sustainable pace? How can we, as the grant writer, the grant professional, the nonprofit professional, the fundraising professional, how can we help our teams do that? So we'll make sure we get questions answered as best possible. At the end, we're going to use the Q&A feature in Zoom to have your topical questions answered, but that chat box, I guarantee that it's not the last prompt I'm going to give you. So please feel free to use it and participate in it if it is meaningful for you in today's session. If it's not, minimize it and it goes away and it won't have to engage, be something you visually engage with during the session. Either way is totally fine. So a cross-functional grant team, when we think about grants, no, forget it. Let's not make it about all of us. Let's make it just about me here first. I will be the first one to say when I got into grants and I was on the grant making side, I definitely did not understand what a grant team was. I didn't understand that it was more than the person writing and submitting the grant. I did not have an appreciation for that. Fast forward then to when I had my first role as a foundation and grants coordinator. I was like, wait, I can't do this all by myself. And the light bulb went off. Or I guess it went on, I should say. And so if we're thinking about what grant teams are and what they look like, has anyone ever taken time to look for it in the dictionary? Maybe looked for it in Google to see what's going to happen? What you'll probably find are a lot of blog posts. You'll find sessions from Grant Hub, or you'll find sessions from the Grant Professionals Association, or different GPA chapters or AFP chapters. That tends to be the sphere where we're hearing and reading conversation about grant teams. But before we talk about grant teams and talk about my definition for them, I have a question for you. Can you tell me in the chat box any examples prior to your professional work of things you did, or maybe things you do now, even outside of your professional work, that are team based? This is not a sports question. It could be, but it doesn't have to be. In the chat box, let me know some of the things that are examples of team based activities that you're part of. Bands, parenting, trivia. Yes, I'm on a trivia team every Wednesday. Perfect. Dancing. Oh my gosh, it's going so fast. I can't keep up. Cooking, volunteers, teachers, family outings, online gaming, escape rooms. Yes, Tammy's really good at escape rooms, just saying from Found It. Communication, events, student clubs. Anybody do musical or theater back when they were in school? I didn't, but watching my daughters in musical, I was like, oh, this is a team activity for sure. Yeah. Wow. So many. Okay, all great examples. So when we think about grants and how we approach grant writing, grant proposal development, and what that means as a team activity, we are going to need different skills. We're going to need different viewpoints. We're going to need different pieces of information in order to make our grants as competitive as possible. Okay, so what do I think a grant team is? You may have some things that you would add to the definition as well. A grant team, to me, that's a group of colleagues. Doesn't matter how many, I'm not naming how small or how big, but it's the group of colleagues that have a stake in seeing grant applications be competitive for their organization to ensure that we can successfully implement them if funded. When I think about a grant team, this could be a formal group. Maybe we see it on a committee roster or a team roster in our organization, or maybe it's informally grouped together. It could be that it's a team that meets and sits around a table together drinking seltzer water and tea, or it could be a group that is sitting down and they're on Zoom together and they never meet in person. It could be a group that primarily does their work in email or over Slack. It could be that they're coming together to talk about their upcoming deadlines for the grant calendar. What's it going to look like? What's our strategy? What are our priorities? And it definitely is going to come into play then when we get into specific applications. Sometimes, maybe more than others, maybe you have most of the information. Other times it's brand new and you need all hands on deck in order to gather the information. So a lot of flexibility in terms of what a grant team is. When we think about a grant team and what that will mean, does it matter if this group of people, informally or formally recognized by the organization, does it matter if they want to wear a little badge on their shirt that says grant team member? No. What you call yourself is just fine. Team awesome? Yeah, that works for me too, right? Grant team is not a required title that they have to embrace as the way that they identify and name themselves. But you know, as the person who's charged with the grant application, the grant proposal, getting that successfully out the door, you can recognize that they are the team that is going to help enable the successful work and at a sustainable pace together. So let's think about some steps for how we could establish this group. So when we look around our organization and we're trying to understand what this group could look like, I would like to know first in the chat box, Y for yes, N for no, S for sort of. How many of you have a grant team in place? Go ahead and let me know in the chat box. I'm going to watch. Oh, we got a wide mix of things. I should have thought to do that as a poll so I could have a formal percentage. We've got a wide range of what that looks like for each of you here in the webinar with us today. So for those that are in the sort of space or the no, what I would encourage you to do is start with this step. What would be the ideal plan? What would we like to have for how we could facilitate the team? Let's not worry about who the players are yet. Let's think about how we want to engage. How do we want to understand our resource needs and priorities? How do we want to have engagement around applications? How often do we think we might be looking for people to participate in either a big strategic conversation or an application specific conversation? Each of you may have slightly different answers, and that's okay. That's why I make it a step so that you're thinking about what is right for you, for your organization, and the size of your grant seeking strategy. For those of you that said yes, you already have a grant team, maybe it's time to revisit and think about what is our ideal plan for facilitation. Might we want to make some changes? Once you have this step done, now let's think about who is already engaged. Who's already engaged in the process, who's already willing or doesn't make what I call the grant face. That's the stressful face where we think about, oh, I have to work on grants? Not necessarily what we're hoping for, but who is it that is engaged and participating in some form with you right now in grants? You know what? Let's give a shout out to these rock stars. When you think about engaged colleagues, go ahead, type their first name or their title into the chat box. That's some good grant karma. They're going to feel the good vibes that you're sending them through the chat box, I promise. And then later on, you can tell them, I was humble bragging about you in a Foundant webinar. Okay, so all of these amazing people who are already engaged. Great. We want to keep them engaged. We don't want to have them get burned out as part of our grant team. So we're going to acknowledge that they play a key role and then we want them to continue playing a key role. Now we can think about what might be missing. If we're thinking about the people that you just were typing into the chat box, do you have someone who is amazing at budget work? Great. That's a key role that you may want to have in your grant team. So maybe you say, well, what we really need, I wish that I could have someone who really is comfortable running all our Salesforce reports, our data information. It kind of depends on the situation for who's involved. It would be nice if we had one point person. So maybe we identify that as a role. I saw someone say that their executive director is already, they're one of the rock stars in step 2. Great. Maybe if you're a smaller organization, maybe you realize that you want to engage your executive director in a more meaningful way in grant conversations. Sure. So that might be what you identify. Maybe you're thinking not so much about the specific contributions they might make to the application, but maybe you're thinking about the different personality types and different ways that people brainstorm or facilitate conversations, have some of those hard conversations. And so maybe we're also thinking about the approach to skills and big picture process that we would be looking for. Maybe you're looking for someone who loves talking about project management. That might be a role that you would look for regardless of what their title is in the organization. Now, when we think about who might be missing, we also then want to think about how are we going to engage them? How might we invite them? But before we do that, I'm wondering when people were thinking about their grant teams, how many of you were thinking about your office pets? Or maybe you work in person most of the time or all the time, and so they're your pets at home. How many of you were counting your cat, dog, fish, turtles, rabbits as part of your grant team? Be honest here. I'm going to raise my hand because on our team at DH Leonard Consulting, the writing team, our pets are a big part of our writing team because they remind us to do things like get up and walk during the day instead of writing all day. They provide a moment of stress relief as we laugh as the cat comes up to Beth's shoulder to say hello during a team meeting. I want to acknowledge that those office pets should not be discounted for the role they play in your grant team. And if you want to give a shout out because you forgot to give a shout out to your office pets, or as the Foundant team says, the pets of Foundant, the dogs of Foundant. They've got a whole section on their website about their pets. Please feel free, have a pet conversation in the chat box. You're more than welcome to. And I'm not trying to joke about it. I'm like, that's actually a meaningful part about thinking about how we care for ourselves as teams. Sitting at the computer all day, not getting up to take the mini golden doodle, little Ollie, my little office puppy. No, not good for me, right? Need him to remind me, get up, walk, let your eyes relax for a minute. Okay, so then we think about what's missing. And maybe it was someone from finance, someone from data, someone from leadership. It's time to engage them. And so, how do we engage them in the conversation? Maybe it's as easy air quotes, as you sending an email or a Slack inviting them to a meeting. Or maybe, depending on the organization's previous approach to grants or the fact that everyone feels the pressure that there are so many things to do, yet only so much time to do them in, maybe it is going to take an invitation from someone in leadership. Please, would you join for a short period of time? Well, you'll know the situation that's best for you, but invite them to come to the grant team. We're going to talk about expectations here and how we'll facilitate in a moment. And so I want to call out that in this step, it's probably pretty important that you are clear about what are you asking for? How many meetings are you asking for them to participate in? How long are those meetings? Or maybe it's not about meetings. Maybe it's about the role they will play in an application, understanding the timeline that you would give them to provide requested information. But as you get to this fourth step, as you're making these invitations, be as clear as possible about what you are asking for. And if you're going to be meeting in person, and you make sure that you've got a nice hydration and caffeination bar set up, coffee, tea, water at those meetings, those are some key details to share as well. So we've identified what our grant team ideally could look like, what we want it to function like. We've thought about who's already actively engaged. We've thought about who we want to invite. We've made those invitations. Hopefully those go well. And then it's going to be time to facilitate them. Now, when we think about who's on that grant team, a question that I saw pop up already in the chat in the Q&A box, what about board members? Should they be involved? I'm going to say that it depends. Could they be involved? Absolutely. Do they have to be? Should they be? Don't have to be. But especially if we've got a smaller organization and we've got a working board, the board members might be all excited to help with grants, especially maybe with relationship development, or maybe you've got someone who loves to be a fresh set of eyes and is going to want to help edit, or maybe you've got someone who's a CPA and loves to review budgets. Absolutely. Think about the skills that they could bring to the grant team. But I wouldn't say you have to have a board member on a grant team, but rather it should be towards your broader idea for what the purposes of your grant team, what the skills are that you're looking to have there. So now let's think about how to facilitate a grant team. I have a challenge for you. In the chat box, could you please describe for me, word, phrase, your choice, what does a facilitator do? But don't use the word facilitate. We already know that one. But what are the things that come to mind for you for what does a facilitator do? So before we talk about how to facilitate a grant team, let's think about what that means. What are some of the things that you as a facilitator of a grant team will do? Okay, keep conversations on track, mediate, guide, listen, organize, follow up, inform, document. You're going so fast. I can't even read all of them. They're amazing. Ask questions, lead, prompt, collaborate, educate, oversee, plan. Wow. Yes, all of those and then some. Wonderful job. Okay. How many of you in your job descriptions have the word facilitator as one of your key job description elements? Anybody have that? Or does that get represented under the other duties as assigned? My gut says for many, having seen my previous job descriptions and knowing what I see in the field, what gets posted in a GPA newsletter at the bottom, a lot of the time facilitation is under the other duties as assigned, but I don't want us to discount how important it is. It's hugely important towards meeting our goals as a grant professional, as a grant writer, as a fundraising professional. So how can we best facilitate a grant team? Well, If there was a perfect answer for every team, whew, wouldn't that be perfect? We know that's not true. Each grant team is unique because you have a different makeup of the individuals. You have different personality types, different levels of experience. We're going to be different teams. And as a facilitator, that's part of what you're trying to think about. What is the best way to help facilitate this specific makeup of individuals, this specific group of professionals? So I bucketed this into 4 common steps that I think if you look at these 4 ideas for how you will facilitate your current grant team or the team that you're pulling together that you're going to start working with next month, these are steps that can help you to facilitate your grant team to be the most high performing team possible for this group. So we're going to look at confirming who's going to facilitate and who are our members. We're going to think about setting expectations, making work visible, and also, yes, we are going to celebrate. So when we're thinking about who's facilitating, who are the members? Now, many of you said that being a facilitator falls under your other duties as assigned. But are there times when, even though you are the primary facilitator, probably for your grant team, are there times when it is someone else in the organization who's facilitating? Could be the case. Let me give you an example. I was working with a very large healthcare organization. And so while the grant professional was facilitating grant application specific conversations, facilitating annual strategic conversations, helping to really facilitate conversations across different departments, different physicians, different principal investigators for what would we apply for, what were priorities for what we would apply for. That information was fed from the grant professional, but led by the CEO for the health system. That was where they were going to have the attention and the respect of all in the room. That was what they decided on. And the grant professional helped support the conversation. Do you have to do it that way? Of course not. Is it one solution that worked for one particular grant team? Yes. So that's why I ask you to think about you may be the primary facilitator in many situations, but not all. So where would be scenarios for you that might be different? And also, therefore, are sometimes those big strategic conversations, do they have a different group of people than what you might have for a specific application? So maybe you have a big strategic grant team for those big resource priority conversations at the beginning of a fiscal year. And then maybe you have subsets that are grant teams that you'll facilitate for specific applications. Also, that's that's really up to your organization's playbook for what looks successful for you as a team. No right or wrong answer, but questions for you to consider. And also remember that maybe leadership changes or some of your colleagues change during the course of a year. And so these answers may evolve and change over the course of a fiscal year as well. So once we know who our teams are, who will be facilitating, whether it's always the same group or sometimes it might be 2 different ones, it's time to set some expectations so that our colleagues understand what is it that we're expecting of them, where are we working together, when and how are we working together. And this is something I love to do using a team working agreement. Has anyone ever used something like a team working agreement or a team charter? Go ahead, let me know in the chat box. Y for yes, N for no, M for you think maybe. Team working agreements can be a great way to quickly come to shared understanding with the team about what does it mean for us when we work together? What are the strengths and the skills that we bring together? What is our purpose for why we're together? What are some of the goals that we're trying to accomplish together? Grant team, raise grant revenue, right? But also maybe maintain funder relationships, build new funder relationships. So it gives time for that conversation and again, that shared understanding. But one of the most important things about these working agreements, should you try the idea in facilitation, is to ensure that we know what our limitations, our boundaries may be. Team, we're all going to work in Google Drive, or team, we're all going to work in SharePoint. We are not sending multiple attachments back and forth over email. Or team, we are asking questions in the margins of a document, or we are primarily talking about the project in this Slack channel, not an email, or we're only using email, but if we do, we'll reply all. I'm making up rules as I'm going along here, right? Your team should set what are the important boundaries for them about how they work together on either a specific application or as a whole for the year. This way, we understand what are important ways that we can support the team when we're facilitating. If you get more than 10 rules in a team working agreement, probably time to stop. See if you can pare them down or group them together. You might only have one, but if you get too many, that's a lot for the team to keep track of and for you to facilitate. But it's really helpful for teams to understand when you've got, they're not, these team members of yours likely aren't full time focusing on this work with you. And so it helps them to understand, when are you asking for my feedback? Oh, only when you tag me in a document? Or only when I get a project digest and it tells me it's time for me to look? I don't have to look at a document every day. These are the sort of things that we can help clear up so that people understand what is expected of them in this participation in a grant team. Once we have our expectations set, okay, let's think about what it could mean to make the work visible to the team. Again, these are team members who probably aren't working on grants full time. In fact, you might not even be working on grants full time. And so, how can the different team members understand what's happening in any given moment? If I'm popping in because it's Thursday and it's time for me to think about grants, what can I do to help? How will I know where we are? Or, geez, I've been told it's time for me to provide feedback on the application or on the logic model. How will I know where it is? How will I know that it's time for me to do that? Different teams are going to have very different answers for how work is visible. It could be that there's a big whiteboard in a development office. It could be that you have some sort of digital tool that you use when you're thinking about project management, maybe Miro or Mural or Asana or Trello or Jira. There are so many. No right or wrong. Tool agnostic here for sure. But how can it be visible to the team without having to ask, hopefully, a whole bunch of questions of you or others? What is happening? Where are we? How can I help? Where should I be? This is also important when we think about the digital storage solution that your team is utilizing. How quickly can we get our grant team members that we've asked for input? How quickly can we get them to the space that we want them to be? So I mentioned a phrase, project digest, just a moment ago. And for us, our team, that's one of the solutions that we use when we have people who are making very important yet distinct contributions to applications, rather than have them think about, where do I have to be in this folder and in this server, whether Drive or SharePoint? And what is should I be in the attachments folder? Should I be in the narrative folder? Am I sure I'm in the right version? How are we naming things? Instead of having people spend time and effort worrying about that, we keep a project digest that is always the same, where they can link right into it. And so when they know, when they're asked for feedback, it's time to go into their project digest and click on whatever links are available to them. That's one solution that has worked for some teams. Have to be what works for yours, but the idea of making it as easy, removing barriers, getting any gatekeeping things out of the way to make it easy for your teams to see, where can they help, where should they be, will take stress out of the process for everyone. And probably the most important step of facilitating a grant team, well, okay, this is my opinion, is celebrating team victories. When we think about what it looks like to get grant funding, this iceberg illusion on the screen, what do people think of as success? The money, the awards. But there is so much more that we could define as success for our grant teams, for our grant seeking strategy. And there's also so much that's happening below the surface that isn't getting celebrated, that isn't having the team really embraced. Wow, can't believe we did all of this together. Look at what we've accomplished. So, what does it mean when a team celebrates? It's up to you. I'm going to give you some examples here in a moment. But before I do, get us started in the chat box. What are the ways that your teams at work celebrate now? And Maybe you start by thinking about how do you celebrate grant award notifications? Sure, let's start there. But if you have other ways, other reasons that your teams are celebrating, I want to hear about that too. Because teams that celebrate together, that take a moment to acknowledge, wow, look at what we did, look at what we accomplished together. Ah, yes, that's the team that's going to be excited then to do that together the next time. And so we want to celebrate more than the awards because there is so much great work happening. So maybe, let's see. Oh, food. I'm seeing a lot of food. Okay, public acknowledgement. Yes, shout outs. There's a lot of positive that can happen from simple, air quotes, simply giving some shout outs and in recognition of great work that's happened. Uh, when we think about the celebration, going beyond our grant awards, how about prepping a board member for a fantastic conversation with a new funder? How about prepping the executive director to have a great meeting with a funder about the report and setting it up for next year's application? Those are certainly worth celebrating. It took a lot of prep work on the team's part. The team member, the board member, the executive director did a great job representing the organization. Worth celebrating. How about submitting a grant report 5 days in advance of its actual due date? Yeah, high fives, shout outs, celebrations all around. I once worked with a team when they would meet a goal, when they would get to something that they thought was worthy of celebration. Yes, we want to celebrate together. They were a fully remote team. They were over multiple states. This particular team decided that they would take turns serving as DJ and they would have just a little dance party for a moment off screen. They didn't want to pressure anyone. And so the rule was all screens off. And regardless of the genre, but different team members would take turn playing like their favorite song of the moment, would bring some levity to the conversation, bring some enjoyment to their day. Hopefully, they'd get a few moments to breathe and celebrate together and then move on. So, celebration doesn't have to be expensive. It can be creative. It doesn't have to be something that's like, oh, wow, that, no, small can be just as important. But you, as the facilitator for your grant team, you're going to be the one that really needs to keep this idea front and center so that you don't all as a team get two heads down and forget to take time to celebrate outside of the grant awards. So when we think about facilitation, mean, I could talk about facilitation things all day long. I love talking about how we can facilitate, how we can help support our teams. In fact, it's why our writing team, everyone on the team is a scrum master, because what that means is that they are focused on helping teams be more effective and efficient and focusing on team happiness. And so they've got a whole toolbox of ways that they're thinking about how to help each grant team that they individually work with be more efficient, effective, happier, and faster. You can also do that. And I get it. You're like, Diane, my plate is so full. But if we are facilitating our grant team and engaging others, we're harnessing the power of their skills, their knowledge. So it isn't all on our shoulders. What that's going to do, it's going to help us come to a more sustainable pace of work. Now, when I was thinking about images for sustainable and team, I really struggled. And this is an ongoing struggle for me of like, what is the visualization of sustainability? You get a lot of things that are more like Earth Day, recycling, environmental type things. So, you know what? I'm open to it. If you've got something that feels like a visualization to you of sustainability related to work, gold stars, bonus points if you're willing to share with us what comes to mind for you visually in the chat box. When we think about sustainable pace of work, I'm climbing on a soapbox. If I had a Dove box, like the soap bar, yep, Dove, like a soapbox. If I had that, I would stand on it right now, would do it. I'm getting on one, so you're fair warned. Okay, when we think about a sustainable pace of work, this is a conversation that is not only about grants. It's not only for grant writers, grant professionals, fundraising professionals. This is an ongoing concern for nonprofit professionals. Has anyone here read The Happy Healthy Nonprofit before? It has been around now probably 4 or 5, maybe 5 years. 4 or 5, written by Beth Cantor and Eliza Sherman. Got their website for their blog. You can go read articles that they've written. Fantastic speakers if you ever have a chance to hear them or anything that they've recorded. But their book, it was a huge splash for our industry to say, like, look at these suggestions for what it would mean for us as a professional and how that would influence our organization as a whole to be a healthier nonprofit organization. Beth is one of the biggest proponents of walking meetings, of getting up truly in conference rooms and like, let's all go for a walk and talk and learn together. So this conversation helped start all sorts of conversations across different nooks and crannies of the nonprofit sector. But let's be real. When we think about grant professionals, burnout, it is a real thing. And Foundant has talked with these 4 delightful individuals pictured on your screen. So there's some great resources through Foundant where you can learn more. But Jonna Rogers, Bethany Planton, Trish Bachman, and Patricia DuBois are 4 individuals who have done some significant research at this point into burnout in the grant profession. Regardless of your title, part-time, full-time, how long you've been in the field, what does burnout look like? I'd encourage you to read more about their work, to read the journal articles they've had published by the Grant Professionals Association, to check out their Twitter feed. Maybe you even, if you love hashtags, start using Healthy Grant Pro when maybe your office pet prompts you to step away from the rest of the grant team for a minute to take a break. But when we think about a sustainable pace of work, yes, I want you to be selfish and I want you to think about it for you as the primary facilitator of your grant team. Take care of yourself. But I do also want you to think about the rest of your team. So there's lots of conversations about this too, beyond those journal articles and the team. The Fundraising Heyday podcast has talked about it, has written about it. So there's a blog post from them that you could go read. Amanda Day, co-host of Fundraising Heyday, is our immediate past president for the Grant Professionals Association. So is saying from the rooftops, like, let's talk about this. This isn't something that we should shy away from. So sustainable pace, what does it mean? How is it that you can use this as a grant professional? Our team has a download that can help you think about what is a sustainable pace for our team? How could we measure that? How could we actually put metrics to it? Now you're like, Diane, you just gave us a whole bunch of resources about sustainable pace. Tell us more about it. Like, really explain what this is and how we actually operate. Of course, the reason I give you all these resources at the front is because I want you to think about and read and contemplate and listen and learn, what does sustainable pace mean for you and for your team? This is something that could sound different for each of you based on your own personalities and preferences and team working agreements. So there's no one perfect answer. But there are some ways that you can help facilitate this conversation so that it is front and center for your grant team. So what I present to you on your screen right now, it's a 12-month grant calendar. It is assuming that we are using the calendar year for our fiscal year. And we've got a whole bunch of grant applications that are going to come up. We've got some foundations, we've got reports that are due, we've got some state grants, some federal grants. Okay, but we've committed to this workload. These are funders we've had before, or things we've said we're gonna focus on. We know we have to do the reports so we can maintain great funding. But well, that may tie to our revenue goal. I have a question. What time of year do you like to vacation? Anyone? Go ahead, type the month in, type the season in. I love to vacation in the summer when it's warm in the Thousand Islands, but I love to vacation in February when the snow is knee high and I need to go somewhere warm. We all have our different preferences. There's no right or wrong. What's important, yes, you're right, paid time off, go away, recharge. Oh, so many different times. I did see somebody say anytime. Okay, yes, fair. Like that too. Whenever you can. But if we think about our grant calendar, yes, these commitments are going to get us to our revenue goal. And whether you like to play in the snow or you like to be on the water, yes, my daughter did say I could share both of her photos. I know. Just a little family moment here in the presentation. Regardless of how you like to vacation and what makes you happy, we need to plan for that. We need to build space in for that. And not only you, I did tell you you got to be selfish, but also your team. So now look at how those deadlines, I had them all at the bottom. I've now placed them in the months where they're actually due. Okay, Thousand Islands, far, far upstate New York. That means we've got June, July, and August if we want to hop in that kayak and really spend time, unless we're trying to dodge ice. There's a fair amount, like these red ones. These are government grants in June and July. Oh, but I want to be out in the kayak. The snowmobile. Hey, snow starts falling here end of October potentially. By December, we might have some good trails open, and definitely in January. But look at all that's happening. So how many of you, when you're laying out the plan for the year for your grant team and what you know about what is likely to happen, also make sure that you block your OOO time, your out of office time, and that for your finance coordinator, if they always take vacation in March for a whole week, are you making sure that that's on the calendar too so that you can plan around it? Gold stars if you are. If you are not, I'd encourage you to consider it. What does that do? It helps us to see what's coming up and what might we do in advance in order to avoid heroic efforts. So you can play with this activity in a virtual board like what I've done here. I did this in a tool called Mural, which will offer free licenses to nonprofits. It's a limitless whiteboard, MURAL. You can do this literally in person. I did this particular one with the Grant Professionals Association chapter near Albany, New York. We got Post-its and we laid it out on the wall. You can do it by looking at not just the whole year, you can do it by looking at a specific application. This way you can see what are the different pieces, the different parts, who's going to help where, and how can we ensure that we're not saving things for the end, or how can we ensure that Kathy isn't checking in to review the budget while on vacation? Or how can we ensure that Pierre isn't logging into Salesforce from some remote VPN while on vacation? Or we are not writing on the few days we have taken off. Having this visible in advance and planning around our time, which lets us recharge, this is an important part of the sustainable pace. Planning for that time, setting those boundaries. Now you might say, Diane, that sounds nice, but is that really possible? I believe it is. Yep, told you I was on the soapbox. I believe it is, but it takes strong facilitation up front on your part to help your team engage in that idea. So our grant calendar action guide, another free download, should it be helpful, can help you facilitate this exercise with your team so that you can think about what does it look like for our team to be sustainable. Now, when we think about sustainable pace, when we think about, as I said, that it's different for everyone, there's something else to consider. How many of you have been asked to, air quotes, you just need to write more grants. We need more grant revenue. Has anyone ever had that asked of them? Don't worry, you don't have to call out your organization, whether it was now or before, but has anyone ever had that happen? Okay, so what I showed you is a conversation about sustainable pace related to the plan, making sure there's time for you to step away, for your colleagues to step away, to not do heroic things like work on the weekend or submit at 11:58 p.m. Eastern time. But that second question I just prompted, which I think I hit a hot button, right? Okay. That also is about sustainable pace. So if we look at our team's past performance, how many grants did we submit last year? How many foundation, how many state, how many federal? That's our past performance. And that's really important. That's a data point. Can we use that to confirm our plan for the next year? We can't simply write 5 more without potentially either sacrificing quality or doing heroic efforts. Something has to change. Maybe it's that we get another team member. Or maybe we try something just really different. We facilitate a conversation about what if we dropped our $2,500 grant asks and only went for the bigger ones this year? Would that let us get to the same goal without extra effort, without heroic efforts? Those are also sustainable pace conversations that I would encourage you to have. And oh, you're like, Diane, this is a lot for us to consider in a short period of time. Absolutely, which is why it's time for questions, because I know we have a bunch of open questions. So let's have some dialogue around it. And then you're going to have all my contact information, and you can feel free to reach out and we can talk about things like this more at your convenience in the place where you're comfortable. So let's see what we've got going on with some of these questions. Okay. So the first question that I see is when we think about a team and how the team can help with grant readiness. I do. This is another big soapbox item. How can a grant team help a grant organization be more grant ready? Which we could argue could be synonymous, could be, not always, synonymous with competitive, long term, sustainable. Ah, that's the part about it that's the key for me. If we have a grant team in place, informal, formal, size, doesn't matter. You're facilitating it in the way that's right for you. Having the grant team mechanism in place enhances an organization's grant readiness because there's depth to our strategy. We have multiple people, different players, different perspectives. It's not reliant only on us, only on one person. It is likely to be able to be maintained if someone gets sick, if someone changes jobs. It is more sustainable. Therefore, we are less likely to drop a deadline, a relationship, a report. The grant seeking strategy, therefore, is more sustainable. Our grant readiness is higher as a whole. Hope that helps. Kelly asked that question. Thank you. That was a great one. Be sure to reach out, though, if you want to talk about that more. Uh, Angela has asked, we're working on increasing the number of staff dedicated to grant management. Are there key roles that are needed for a grant team? You want to have what I say is cross-functional. And that means there's a lot of room for interpretation for what you have in terms of a title, what the role may be in the organization. So you want to think about the key attributes needed for grants to be successful. You need someone who loves to talk about probably program goals, objectives, logic models. You need to have budget represented, data, evaluation, big picture strategy, and leadership. Those may be wrapped up into just 2 or 3 people. It might be 4 or 5, 6 or 7. It'll look different in each of your organizations, but you want to think about the skills that are important for a grant application to be competitive pre-award and able to be managed post-award. Great question, Angela. Like I said, be sure to reach out if you have more questions afterwards. Okay, how do you craft a grant team around the ever-changing types of grants? Not everyone needs to be involved in every grant. Is it just as simple as leaving people off of meetings? Oh, Katie, love it. Thank you so much for that question. So having different grant teams come together for different purposes is, yeah, it's very agile. You're responding to the situation versus saying, this is the group of people that always come together, whether it adds value for them to be there or not. So I love where you're going with this. So you may have a team that makes the decision. We apply for all of these things. We're all on board. And that may be the same team that then comes together for applications. But occasionally you're like, this one's it's nice and short. We've written about it before. We don't have to upload a logic model. We've already agreed on what the logic model is and what our writing is then based on. This one, we're not actually going to even have to have a grant team meeting about it. We're just going to go through our normal review process for grammar and also for content for confirmation from the team. So we can ebb and flow the process as the facilitator so that we ensure that if we're pulling the team together, it adds value for those that are together. And if you're the one facilitating, whether it's a formal bullet in your job description or other duties as assigned, I think you're empowered to make those choices, focusing on what's the value of having us together and ensuring that those that get invited always have the opportunity to provide value and it's meaningful for their time. Great question. Thank you so much. Oh, so many great questions. And I'm like, I don't want to miss any, Tammy. So if there's anything you want to call out for me too, by all means, please let me know. Oh, I just found one from Jennifer, though, that I'm going to grab. We constantly get new opportunities that we're charged with pursuing. How can we plan vacations ahead of time in that environment? So, Jennifer, what you've just described to me is what I would call reactive grant seeking. Ooh, new opportunity. Let's go for it. Versus proactive. Here are our resource needs. Here are where we think we will apply over the course of the year. Existing relationships, new relationships. You're right. We don't always know what's going to open. New funder, new opportunity, new something from the state or from the federal government. It happens, and organizations will make the choice to go after them. Absolutely. But if you are always in a reactive mode, if you are always, ooh, new thing due in 3 weeks, time to go, you're right. It's very difficult to plan a vacation and feel confident that you aren't going to be pressured to hop on Slack, to open the email, to have to write. I would welcome others to share their thoughts on this topic because I don't claim to have all the answers. But this is part of why the conversation today has been about grant team, so that we can protect each other and say, you know, Jennifer's out these next 3 days. And yes, we're going to go after this opportunity, but what can we start from what we already have? Or can we get started on the budget while Jennifer's out, right? The team has got a stake now in this being successful. And because we set that team working agreement and we want all of our grant team members to stay out of grants when they're on vacation, if that's a boundary we set, then the team will make a plan that would work for you in that reactive situation. That is our ideal that we are striving for in your grant team. Is it easy? Is it perfect to get to it? No, it takes work. That's where your facilitation work will come in, where the team working agreement might be a good fit. And I do see that we've got lots of extra comments coming up in the chat box that might be helpful for you in that too. But do please reach out and ask questions. Also would be, I think, a great conversation to have to see what folks are thinking in Grant Zone or in Compass, right? Tammy and Michaela shared the information and link about the Compass community found it hosts. I bet that would get a lot of conversation going if you want to ask it there. I've got just a few minutes to the top of the hour. Tammy, any particular question I should go for?
Hi, Diane. Let's look to see if there's one. I think there's one with several votes here. Um, the one from Lauren about as your grant team grows from one person to multiple, are there best practices for determining team structure? Breaking out government versus foundation grant teams, or sub-segmenting sub teams that wrangle pre-award versus post-award. Currently, they got 3 people doing all the things, which doesn't feel sustainable.
Yeah. And so the answer to me is it depends. And the reason it depends is on, right? I'm like, oh, I hate to give that answer, but it depends on the skills and strengths of the people that are already involved, and where one may want to take a little more ownership on something versus another. But the fact that you have 3 who can do all the things, are amazing and qualified to do all the things, is actually fantastic, because sometimes what we find is when it goes from 1 to 2 or 3 or 5, people feel siloed and they're like, I do this. And someone else says, I do that. Oh, and I do this over here. And they don't think about how they can help each other. So maybe you start to put some kind of boundaries on, I may start this, but I know I could ask for your help here. That may be helpful, but the fact that you can each do all the things is actually an ideal state. Yeah. I might want to talk about how you prioritize who grabs what, or how you know what the flow would be, so that you don't all feel pressured to watch all the things, but rather are looking at a more narrow prioritized workflow. That's my initial gut on that. Lauren, I know that's only a teeny tiny answer to a very big question. So I'm going to flip the slides that you've got my email address. It's also in the slide handouts for the session, but by all means reach out. And this is true to anyone else that asked a question that got upvoted, or even if it didn't, if you asked a question and I didn't get to it yet today, please reach out. I'm happy to answer, whether it's via email or if you reach out to us on social media. Megan will make sure that she's our marketing and training coordinator. She will make sure that I see it and that I help respond to your fantastic questions, because clearly talking about grants as a team activity, yep, it's an important conversation, and it's one that there aren't perfect answers for, and there's a lot of interpretation that's right for your team. So happy to help dialogue, brainstorm, facilitate around that. Oh,
Excellent. Man, there's so many questions on that. And I did chat out the Grant Station survey and benchmarker to find out
great.
what is more typical with your peers for this appropriate size of organization. And yes, I wanted to highlight this. Diane, go ahead and tell them about what we have coming up.
Yeah, and it's perfect. So this is another opportunity where our team and the Foundant team come together and work on something for your benefit. And it's a free summit. It's October 7th. It's the Agile in Nonprofits Summit. Here's why I think this might be meaningful to you. You've been asking questions about teams working together. What's the best way to coordinate, to grow, to adapt to different situations? That's Agile. The value of responding to change over following a plan, the value of focusing on our interactions together versus what the document might say. Those are Agile values. And so we bring nonprofit speakers, not trainers, nope, not keynote speakers, nope, nonprofit professionals like you who are doing work in an Agile way are going to come and speak. They've got 10 minutes each, and then they answer questions. It's all free. You can catch it live, you can catch it recorded. Would love to have you join us, and registration's open. So please feel free to reserve your spot now.
Excellent. Thank you. And Michaela, if you could help me by chatting out the link to the registration for that, that would be perfect. And also, we encourage you to join our community compass. We will be looking over these questions. So many questions came at the end there, Diane. People, you've got people talking, and they're great questions that, I mean, even if we went 2 hours long, you couldn't answer them all. So what we're going to do is make sure that we send out links to everyone who registered with the recording, and also the slides and your resource. And that is going to be available. We'll look at trimming through the chat. A lot of people wanted some resources that were highlighted in the chat. We'll go through those and glean those and put those on our community as well and make those available. Thank you so much for doing that. And we are really so thankful for Diane, and we know you have so many great trainings for all of how do you do this? How do you actually make it happen? It's so hard, and we really care about each of you as individuals and want to make sure that you remain healthy and happy. So taking care of yourself and working at a pace and knowing what that pace is so you could say no when you need to say no, or plan around it is important. And so all the tools that Diane has, I just highly recommend those, learning how to use them. And if you don't already have a connection on our website, we have more exciting education webinars coming up in the future. Next month in September, we're going to be talking about a skills map for nonprofits. So bring your whole team. It's not just grants and fundraising, but what other career areas and skills do you need as you to grow your nonprofit organization? And then using inclusive language in grants is going to be in October. And oh man, there's just more good stuff coming. So stay tuned on that. And Diane, do you have any other closing remarks?
Oh, I just want to say thank you. And this was such a rich dialogue. I'm like, I can't wait to catch up on the chat and the questions. Like, I know I
Yeah.
missed so much of what happened. There was so much, and it was
Goodbye.
great. And thank you for sharing and learning and being with us today. It was an honor. I look forward to answering more questions and connecting with all of you.
Thank you again so much. And we wish you all the best success in your fundraising and other efforts. Thank you.